Good morning, students. Welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian. I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here in Western Canada. I hope that everybody has had a great week. I hope that you're all looking forward to a fantastic weekend. In this class, everyone, we are looking at IELTS Writing Task 1 for the academic version of the IELTS exam, which means that we will be looking at a bar graph on genders and faculty in university. And for general IELTS students, your task 1 is a fair bit different. You will be writing a letter or an email, so keep that in mind. If you are a general IELTS student, I highly recommend going to gieltshelp.com for our general IELTS materials. This lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS. And this is a members chat class. That means you need to be a member to join the chat in this class. It is the join button is next to the subscribe button on the channel page. Welcome, Carolina, our chat moderator. Good to have you in the class. And on our websites, you can use this code pattern20 for a 20% discount. Let me quickly show you where that is. So on our academic IELTS website, to join our premium package, just click this big red button. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. We are an official British Council IELTS test registration center in Saudi Arabia. We are certified British Council agents and IDP affiliates. So you're in great hands with us. When you click that red button, then you can click this use a coupon code and use this code pattern20. I've put this code into the chat as well to get a 20% discount on our websites. These websites are basically the support materials for these live classes. So to get the most from these live classes, it's a very good idea to get our practice exams videos interactive course. For the general IELTS, it's gieltshelp.com, as I mentioned before, and it's this green background here. Click that big red button there to join the premium package that's just right behind my head there, and you're off to the races. Of course, we have apps, and you can download and link the apps to the websites. The apps are Academic IELTS Help and General IELTS Help. Get those from your app store, create an account, link the app to the website, and then you can learn from the app on your mobile or from the website on your PC. IELTS_AE Help for Instagram and GIELTS Help for Instagram. You will find our weekly schedules there, as well as posts for vocabulary and other tips for the IELTS exam to get those high scores. And if you have questions still, you can always send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. Whether it's about IELTS, it's about English, immigration, university, just send us an email and we usually get back to you within 24 hours with an answer. And then make sure to note our schedule after this class. We will have a listening class for our subscribers to join the chat. And then tomorrow we will also have speaking part 2 and speaking part 3. As well as classes on Sunday. On Sunday, the classes will be on different platforms. One class will be on Lighthall. Lighthall is a fantastic platform for live learning. I'm putting that into the chat for everybody. And then we will have a class on a Discord server as well, IELTS Prep, and you have to look for the AE Help channel there. So more coming there. I'll share that link shortly with everyone as well in upcoming classes. So get ready for lots of live classes, lots of English learning, and lots of improvement on your IELTS exam. And if you don't use it yet, make sure to sign up for Grammarly. Grammarly is a very powerful tool for writing in English to improve your grammar. Use our link here. I just put this into the chat as well to sign up for Grammarly. And then when you use our link, by the way, Grammarly, there's a very good free version. Then we will score your IELTS essays for free. So we'll give you band estimates for free. So that's to help you with your writing and your grammar and to give you an idea of your IELTS band score for your writing. So sign up for Grammarly, use it, send us your essays, and then we will give you a score, a band score for your essays. Just make sure to use our link, which is this right here. All right. Arda, the Discord class is going to be speaking. That's usually speaking. Very good question. We will probably do other kinds of classes, Arda, in the Discord class as well. Carolina just put the link for the Discord class into the chat also for people to sign up. Thank you for that, by the way, Carolina. That's fantastic. All right, let's take a look at our IELTS writing task 1 for the academic IELTS. Now, again, remember for students in India doing the IDP exam, the paper-based exam, your writing section comes first. So you will be doing writing before listening and reading in your IDP exams. That's again for the paper-based exam in India, which in some ways is good because you have lots of energy, lots of focus. So this would be your first assignment if you're doing the academic IELTS. For people doing the computer-based exam or exams in other parts of the world, the writing section comes last in the sitting part of the exam. So you would be looking at this just before task 2 at the end of the exam. Make sure to do task 1 writing first. You don't have to. You can do writing task 2 first, but it is a good idea to do task 1 writing first. Start with that one because you have all the information there to write a good essay. You do not need to come up with your own original argument like for task 2. So in this way, task 1 is easier. It's an expository essay, which means that you have to explain and expose the information to your reader. And you do that based on a graph or a chart or diagram that they give you. Make sure to practice all the different kinds of task 1 questions before your IELTS exam, especially if you haven't done this type of writing much. Because whether you're looking at a line graph, a pie chart, a bar chart, it's different kinds of writing. So learning templates in online classes or in real classes for your IELTS and physical classes, templates don't get high marks on task 1 because they don't work, because different kinds of task 1 questions require different kinds of answers. So you have to have the right strategy and the right thinking here. Your first step, members, is to read the question carefully, of course, right? Read the question carefully. Task 1 has 4 parts, basically. Introduction, an overview, a body, and a summary. Okay, and I'll explain each of those in detail. So the introduction is paraphrase with detail. I mean paraphrase of the question. So it introduces what you are looking at, simply put. It's a paraphrase of the question with detail, okay? And I'll explain the other parts as we go along. So let's do this first part first. So here, let's read the question and then paraphrase it, okay? IELTS Task 1 Writing. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The following graph shows the gender distribution in a university according to, graph shows the distribution of gender in a university according to faculty and subjects in a specific year. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So again, let's read that. There's a couple typos there. So the following graph shows the distribution of gender in a university according to faculty and subjects in a specific year. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, now before you start paraphrasing that question, make sure to have a look at the graph and see what's going on here. So for example, here it says the following graph. Okay, sure, fine. So, well, what kind of graph, right? We know that it is a bar graph just by looking at it, right? So we already have a little bit more detail. It's not a line graph. It's not a pie chart. You could use a pie chart for this as well, by the way, but it's not a pie chart. It's a bar graph. It makes the most sense for this kind of information. Shows the distribution of gender in a university. Okay, do we know what university? No, it's just some university. It doesn't give us that information. According to faculty and subjects. Okay, so what's the faculty? What's the subjects? So I'm looking for that. And here I can see that we have arts, astronomy, history, engineering, law, medicine, and science. Now, I could list these in my introduction, which is fine, but at minimum, I realize that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different subjects, okay, or 7 different faculties, if you will, okay? So again, that's a little piece of extra information that I should include in my introduction, okay? So there's 7 subjects, okay, in a specific year. What's that specific year? I know that that specific year is 2008. So I've got more information there. Okay, it's 2008. And I've got a couple of different colors of bars here. So I've got blue and orange. And of course here I can see that the orange are female faculty and the blue are male faculty. So we know that the genders that we're looking at here are female and male. Okay, so gender, female and male. All right. And I know that with gender during our modern time, we have a broader scope or view. We have universal and gender neutral. IELTS is not really the time to dig into those kind of details. Just go with what they are showing you, okay? All right, so we have a lot more detail. We know that it's a bar graph. We know that we're looking at females and males. We know that we're looking at 7 subjects. We know that we're looking at the year 2008. So now I can paraphrase this question with greater detail from the graph. By the way, of course, we want to make sure that we look at the y-axis here. That's just off to my side this way. We see that it's not numbers, so it's not like 5 or 10 faculty or 50 faculty, but it's actually percentages. So it's the percent of the faculty from the total. So we don't know the actual number of professors or teachers in those faculties, but we know the percentage of the individuals. So careful with that. Make sure to pay attention to that as well. Tulsi Patel, welcome to our group of members. I see that you just joined up in the chat. That's awesome. Make sure to send us an email so we can hook you up with those exclusive videos. Okay, so we see that it's the percentage that we're looking at here as well. Okay. So the distribution is the percentage. So I can start paraphrasing this for the introduction, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now it says write at least 150 words. 150 words, students, is the bare bone minimum. To get high bands, to get a band 7, 8, or a 9, I highly recommend working hard and exceeding that minimum of 150 words. It's very hard to write all of the necessary information in exactly 150 words, okay? We definitely don't call this a blueprint. We don't refer to bar graphs and pie charts as blueprints. If you see like a map of a building or a town, even maybe, you could call that a blueprint, but not for something like this, So with a bar graph, to call it a blueprint is awkward, and you don't want to make awkward mistakes. Okay, so do not call this a blueprint. I see your writing there, don't call it a blueprint, okay? Instead, be specific. So I don't know if, again, I have a feeling like there's a video out there or something that's telling people, oh, use the word blueprint, they'll give you a good score. Yeah, as long as you're accurate, as long as you're actually looking at a blueprint. A blueprint would be like the layout of a mall diagram, okay? So careful, even a process diagram would not be considered a blueprint. So blueprints are fairly specific. Blueprints are usually the design of a building. Okay, so careful with that. All right. Okay, so this bar graph, or the bar graph, okay? You don't, like a lot of students will write the given graph. You don't have to write the word given even, because we generally don't refer to the graph itself, but we refer to the information in the graph, okay? So remember this, that in expository writing, okay, this is just an added tip here. Good expository writing refers to the information and not the physical graph. So don't write the graph below or the given graph. Just write the bar graph or this bar graph, okay? Instead, write the bar graph. Okay, so if we're going to refer to the graph, at least not refer to its location on the paper, okay? So here we go with the paraphrase. Now, members, you can do the same here, okay? So the bar graph shows, there are many, many different ways to say the word shows, illustrates. The instead of distribution, we can say the percentage or percent of female and male. So notice how instead of writing gender, I'm writing female and male. So I'm being more specific using the legend. Okay, the legend is whatever describes the elements of a map or a graph. Okay, so percentage of female and male faculty according to 7 subjects. Now, if I want, I could include the 7 subjects here. So we've got arts, astronomy, history, engineering. And we have law, medicine, and science. Now notice that I'm using a comma after each of those subjects. The first comma comes after subjects, right? Which is introducing the list, okay? And the last comma comes before the and. There's no space before the comma, okay? A lot of students, I'm not sure why, but a lot of students put spaces before the comma. That actually looks really odd, and if you're going for a band 9, that would not be a good idea, okay? And for a band, even a band 8 candidate, you have to use punctuation accurately, and that means even the spacing has to be accurate. So make sure that you do not leave spaces before commas, okay? So here we go. The bar graph illustrates the percentage of female and male faculty according to 7 subjects: arts, astronomy, history, engineering, law, medicine, and science. In 2008, in some university, because we don't know the university. Okay. All right. So that is my introduction so far. All right. And that's all I need for the introduction for this bar graph. Okay. This is a fairly simple graph. You're not going to have a very lengthy introduction, which is totally fine. Okay. All right, so now comes the overview. Okay, that's the second part, and the IELTS likes to see the introduction and the overview as 2 separate paragraphs, so you can write 2 separate paragraphs. In university, it's not necessary, but in the IELTS, they like to see the introduction separate from the overview. In university, the overview would be considered part of the introduction. Okay. All right, before I get to the overview, let's take a look at what a couple of our students have written here for the introduction. So this is Dwee here, okay, our member. Again, this is a members chat class. To become a member, just click that join button next to the subscribe button, and then you can join this kind of chat. Of course, you're welcome to watch. Watching is learning as well, and you can practice this on your own at home also while you're watching. So here, Dwee writes the blueprint. Now, as I said, Dwee, blueprint is not ideal, so we want to replace blueprint with bar graph. Okay, it's more specific. It gets you more band scores. So if you call it a bar chart, that's okay as well. Just be consistent. Don't change it. So if you say bar chart, then make sure you use bar chart in all of your essay. If you use bar graph, use bar graph. Don't switch between that American, Canadian, British, English. Okay, let's say the bar graph above, again, don't refer to the location of the graph, Dwee. So not necessarily, it's strange because for me it's actually below. So, but we wouldn't refer to its location. In your computer-based exam, it's to the left. It's just weird to identify the location of the graph. So the bar graph depicts the proportion between female and male employees in 7 majors of an educational institution in 2008. Okay, yeah, so you didn't list the majors, Dwee, which is fine. The reason I decided to list the majors here is because it's a fairly simple graph, so I have enough time and space to give that bit of detail. Okay. All right, so Dwee, remember, no referring to the location of the graph, no calling it a blueprint. Okay, and then you'll be clearer, more accurate. All right. Let's see what Arda wrote. Okay, Arda writes, the bar graph depicts the percentage of female and male academic personnel in a university in 2008 based on their field out of 7 subjects, namely arts, astronomy, history, engineering, law, medicine. Yes, I see the rest of it, Arda. You ran out of space. Medicine and science. Okay, good. Yeah, that looks good. All right, that's a good introduction. I like your use of this collocation here, academic personnel. Sure, academic personnel would be faculty. okay? And you decided that, hey, yeah, might as well list these right away. All right, so for the overview, okay, let's see, where's my, there we go. For the overview, you want to identify the main features. Okay, what does that actually mean, right? Like, what does it mean, identify the main features? Identifying the main features means capturing the most obvious patterns or trends or differences in the data without going into details, without going into too many numbers, okay? So it means reporting the main features, patterns, differences that can be observed without looking at the specifics of the data, okay? And again, this is not always most and least, okay? A lot of IELTS students, especially students that don't have too much experience with statistics, with graphs and charts, they learn, of course, in simple IELTS courses that, just report the most. So most of the men were in engineering, and the least amount of women were in engineering, and the most women were in history, and the least men were in history. So a lot of students tend to kind of fall into this oversimplified concept of the overview where they go for most and least, which are these ones here, okay? But that's not considered expert level of academic English on the academic IELTS exam. For some questions, it could be the most prominent or obvious feature, but for some of the other questions, that might not be the most obvious or best approach to doing the overview. And the overview is extremely important because the overview also creates the outline for the rest of the essay, for the body paragraphs. It's kind of like your thesis. Whatever you write in the overview is expanded in the body paragraph in greater detail. So you don't necessarily want to go with that most and least because you might end up with kind of a weak essay. Okay, so this is an important tip for everybody because they tell you this, but simple IELTS courses don't necessarily get high band scores, and improving the way that you think about the information is sometimes much faster than improving your English, like your vocabulary and grammar. So it's a faster way to get a higher score by learning better strategies, okay? So learn better strategies. It's a faster way to improve your score. And it's refreshing for the IELTS examiners to see an essay that doesn't just write, most of the men, as we can see from this bar graph, were in engineering. Most of the women were in the least amount of, it's like, it's, you know, imagine you're reading these essays and this question was in the IELTS exam, you're the examiner, and 95 from 100 essays start with the same most and least kind of concept. So don't always start with that. So let's take a look at this. So if we're not just looking at the most and the least, what becomes apparent? So what is something that we can see here by looking at this, right? We're looking at the females and the males. So look past the most and the least, and you can kind of observe another interesting pattern here. And if I look at this myself, let me show you what I mean. I notice this here. I notice this here. Oops, So let me do that one more time. So I notice this here. I notice this here. And then I notice also, let me use a different color. I notice this here, this here, this one, and then I notice also kind of this one here. Okay, so there's definitely an interesting kind of pattern that evolves in front of me. What is that? So you notice that I'm using different colors. There's a logic behind these colors. So what am I trying to point out here? What do we notice in this university of the for the genders in these different faculties? Anybody see what I'm trying to point out? There's an interesting piece of information. Okay, I'm going to start writing my overview here slowly while you figure out what I'm trying to make obvious for you. And this is again that band 7, 8, 9 level writing where you're not just simply using the English that you have, which could be intermediate or advanced, but you're also using good thinking, good critical thinking. So Dewey says, the engineering has the greatest difference in the proportion of men and women. Yes, that's true, Dewey, but we have some other information here that I think is even more interesting than just the biggest difference, okay, or the smallest difference, all right? So let's see if you can figure that out, okay? While I start writing this overview, I'm going to grab my introduction here and take that out and then stick it in underneath here. Okay, so this is the introduction. Again, all right, you do not need to write introduction in the IELTS, or you do not need to write overview. This is just for your learning that I'm doing this. Okay. So all right, so this is what I noticed for my overview. So looking at the data, it is clear that in some majors there is a relatively balanced distribution of men and women, namely arts and medicine. So if we look at medicine and arts, it's kind of similar numbers, especially medicine, but you can see here that arts and medicine, you've got kind of a very similar amount or balanced percentage proportion of male-female faculty. And then you notice that with the other ones, it's much less balanced, right? So with astronomy, with science, with law, it's quite a bit less balanced. And then especially with engineering, you've got a very uneven distribution. And then you have that as well with history, except with history, it's the other way. It's dominated by female faculty, okay? So the distributions are a bit different, okay? Everybody sees that now, hopefully. All right, and that's the kind of realization that you want to have in an IELTS exam when you're looking at a bar chart, to really be able to aim for those higher band scores, because now I can write a more interesting essay, right? Okay, so it's the proportions, right? So some proportions are balanced, some proportions are not. And the ones that aren't, they're mostly male dominated, except for history, okay? And engineering is the most extreme case. Okay. All right. Now, that's the overview. So once you identify this, it's a matter of just writing it down, right? And then reviewing it. You should always review what you write. Zarina says medicine is equal in interest. Yep. So it's more balanced, right? It's almost a 50-50, all right? Dwee says engineering has the highest. It's the most disproportionate. Yes, absolutely. So the word Dwee is disproportionate. Okay. Lamia says females are competing for males in art and medicine. I think they're competing in all, but it's not necessarily a competition. It's just the balance of male and female faculty. So careful with the word choice there too, Lamia, okay? And then always review what you write. So the bar graph illustrates the percentage of female and male faculty according to 7 subjects: arts, astronomy, history, engineering, law, medicine, and science in 2008 in university. In some university, let's change that to in a university there. Looking at the data, it is clear that in some majors there is a relatively balanced distribution of men and women, namely arts and medicine, while in others there are significantly more males than females: astronomy, science, law, and engineering. However, history is dominated by female faculty. Okay, so that's my overview, and that makes sense, and that gives me a really clear outline and direction for the rest of my essay. Okay. Arda writes, at first glance, it is seen that the percentages of female and male staff in some majors are closely balanced, specifically in arts and medicine. Very good, Arda. Yeah, that's a great start to the overview. Okay, and then you can continue. While in others, there is a disproportion of men to women. Okay, so you can simplify what I wrote a little bit too in the way that I just showed. But the concept is to kind of express this to your reader, right? That in some faculties you find kind of, hey, in one class there's a man, in the other class there's a woman professor, and in other faculties you go in and it's just about every class that you go into will have one or the other, or you'll have a lot more, okay, depending on the major. All right, now the overview is the outline, it's the thesis, okay? So if you have learned task 2 with me, you know the importance of a thesis statement, and the overview is basically your thesis, okay? So thesis, in that I mean that it gives the structure of your essay. Okay, so what you do now, and this is why the overview is so important, and this is why it's so important to look past the most and least, because now you can go into more detail, okay? So when you go to the body paragraph, and the body paragraph is your analyses with an E is plural for analysis, okay? So simply put, your body paragraph, your analyses, is a detailed expansion of your overview. So let me show you what I mean. Basically, if I say that there's a relative balanced distribution of men, namely arts and medicine, then that's going to be my point one. Instead of writing about engineering being the most and least, I'm going to write about arts and medicine. Okay? So here, I can write in more detail, or in greater detail. Medicine has a nearly 50-50, just like that. Okay, 50-50 proportion of men to women staff, while arts, was it arts? Yes. Arts has slightly more women, 55-45, right? While arts has slightly more women than men at 55-45%, respectively. Respectively means it's 55% women and 45% men. So now this sentence basically gives more detail to this statement here, the relatively balanced distribution of men and women in arts and medicine. So everybody sees that, okay? And notice how I'm not getting too lost in numbers, right? So Dwi, Zarina, Lamia, Arda. Lots of people in here. That's great. Do you see what I mean by that? So do you see how I'm expanding on that first point? Okay, so sentence by sentence, right? I'm basically constructing this essay like a Lego castle, okay? And I see the pieces, I see the colors of the pieces. Now I just have to put that together, okay? Zarina, the graph is right here, okay? So right now, all I did, Zarina says, I can't see the graph. Well, hopefully you can see it now, Zarina. So here, all I did is I took my first point of arts and saying that it's balanced, and it's right here. Okay, I've got 40% there, 60% there, so this is 55, this is 45 here. Okay, and this one here, they're so close that I just said 50-50. Like if I draw my little line there, they're almost equal. It's like there's a slightly little bit more women than men, but you can't get lost in that level of detail, okay? So if you are on a PC, you can probably see that there's a little bit of difference there, but that's so trivial, that's so negligent that on an IELTS exam, you would not be digressing to explain that there's like a 2% difference between females and males in medicine. Okay, there's no point there. All right. So now I'm basically done with these. Okay, so check, those are done. All right. Now I want to write in more detail about my next point, right, which is the different distributions where we have significant differences. And this is where I focused on astronomy and law and science. Okay. Now, here, do I want to look at each one of these specifically and start writing about the different percentages? So this would be my third point. Now, do I want to, so this is a question, members. Do I want to write, in astronomy, law, and science, there are significantly more men than women staff. In astronomy, women are at 35%, while men are at 65%. In law, women are at 40%, and men are at 60%. In science, women are at 35% and men are at 65%. So do I want to write all of those percentages now, looking at these for my second point? Okay, so this is my point 2. Should I be writing all of these specific percentages for these 3 comparisons, so astronomy, law, and science? So Dewey says, no, it's too many words, just only show the data but not analyze the data. Arda says, in other subjects there are more male staff than females except for history. That's part of the overview, right, Arda? Okay, so here I'm going into a little bit more detail. Zarina says, no, not just the percentages, but including the description. Yeah, okay, or at least group them. So notice how astronomy and science are the same. They're both 35% women and 65% men. Then law is kind of similar with 60% men. So at least group them, okay? Don't write it separately. So wherever you can group together the information, make sure you group it, okay? You want to be concise. Concise writing means using the least words necessary to explain the information clearly. You must have concise writing for high band scores, okay? This is a very important tip. Keep this in mind, okay? So right now we're into the body, which is, we can also call it the analyses. And really important one here, okay? So again, the body and the analyses, as I mentioned earlier, is greater detail of each point in the overview with concise writing. Okay, to get high band scores, you must use concise language. Okay. All right. So let's do that. Okay, so this is my second point. So again, first point was, in greater detail, medicine has a nearly 50-50 proportion of men to women staff, while arts have, right, because it's arts, it's plural, have slightly more women than men at 55 to 45% respectively. However, astronomy science and law are more disproportionate, with greater amount of, greater number, better word here, of men than women. 65%, if I really want to write those percents, to 35% for the first two, and 60% to 40% for the latter. Okay. So here, however, let me move this down a little bit. Okay, so however, astronomy, science, and law are more disproportionate with a greater number. By the way, that's using Grammarly. With a greater number of men than women. Make sure your thens are with an A, not an E. 65 to 35% for the first two, meaning astronomy and science, and 60% to 40%, let's not forget my symbol there, for the latter. And then now I can write the most disproportionate major is engineering, which is dominated by men at 90%. And I don't need to write 10% women because that's kind of obvious with math at 90%. And the second most is history, dominated by women at 75%. Okay, so let me show you what I just did there, all right? So basically what I did here is I reported on astronomy. Okay, check, that was done. I compared that with science, which was the same proportion. Check, that was done. As well, I grouped that with law, which was a very close, similar kind of distribution. Check, that was done. Okay, we already did arts and medicine, of course. And then what I did is I said, okay, well, the most disproportionate is engineering. Check, that was done. And the second most is history. Check, that was done. So that's how I went through. And notice how the most here actually came out at the end of my essay, because I thought that was kind of, you know, it was important, but I figured that would go well at the end of my essay because the other comparisons were a little bit more interesting for me, the subjects that were balanced or less disproportionate. Okay. Now, don't believe me, believe the essay, right? So the best way to check this is to read the work, right? Does it make sense? So let's read it, okay? Here we go. The bar graph illustrates the percentage of female and male faculty according to 7 subjects: arts, history, astronomy, history, engineering, law, medicine, and science in 2008 in a university. Looking at the data, it is clear that in some majors there is a relatively balanced distribution of men and women, namely arts and medicine, while in others there are significantly more males than females: astronomy, science, law, and engineering. However, history is dominated by female faculty. In greater detail, medicine has a nearly 50-50 proportion of men to women staff, while arts have slightly more women than men at 55 to 45% respectively. However, astronomy, science, and law are more disproportionate with a greater number of men than women, 65% to 35% for the first two, and 60 to 40% for the latter. The most disproportionate major is engineering. Instead of major, I think field is a better choice here. Field is engineering, which is dominated by men at 90%. And the second most is history, dominated by women at 75%. Okay, so far so good. Everybody following along with me so far? Any questions so far? Let me know. So students, I am interacting with you. Members, I am curious about what you write. So do let me know if you have questions, and do practice your writing. Put it into the chat as Arda just did. Okay. So Arda wrote this for part of the body. Arda writes, in further detail, there is a balanced distribution between men and women by roughly 50%. At roughly 50% in arts and medicine. Yeah, I like how you're capitalizing. You can certainly do that. I mean, it is the name of the faculty. You could also use the lowercase here because they are just common nouns also. So whichever you prefer. In astronomy, male staff is, yeah, because staff is non-count, Arda. So male staff is significantly more than female by roughly 60 to 40%, with a dash instead of 2, and that's fine also. Just a couple of missing the words there according to Grammarly. Fair enough. They're unique. You're speaking about a unique group, so it's the female by roughly 60 to 40. Baljit says you're using disproportion 3 to 4 times. Yeah, let me check, Baljit. So I'm not sure if I do. I'd have to check. Introduction, no, I'm not using the word disproportion. Baljit is just worried that there's too much word repetition with distribution. So let's take a look. Or sorry, disproportion. Let me see. I'm using proportion, which is not the same, right? That's the positive side. This is disproportion once, disproportion twice. I'm only using it 2 times, Baljit, and that's okay. I mean, if I'm really paranoid about paraphrasing, then I could change that, but twice is okay, all right? All right, yeah. If I want to change it, then I could say skewed. The most skewed field is engineering. The most skewed gender in any field is engineering. Gender ratio, have to be a little bit more specific there. The most skewed gender ratio in any field is engineering, and then I can kind of do it in a different way, Baljit, if I'm really trying to avoid any word repetition at all, which is not necessary. Again, you can get even a band 9 if you repeat 1 or 2 words a couple of times. So they're not that strict about paraphrasing, but if you really want me to change it, there you go. Okay, and you can. If you have enough time when you're reviewing, you can. Now, I used to tell students to write a separate summary, and you might still want to do that. If you're going for a band 9, you can write a summary. A summary is not a conclusion, but it's an overall piece of valuable information. So a valuable piece of information that can be gained by looking at all of the analysis or analyses, okay? It is not a conclusion, and you can include this as the last part of your body paragraph. All right, and I did learn something interesting here. What did I learn? So when I look at this this bar graph, one piece of evidence does become kind of clear for me here, considering these. So what can we learn in summary here based on these 7 majors, or these 7 fields of study: arts, astronomy, history, engineering, law, medicine? We can learn something interesting here, and we can summarize that. Let's see if you picked up on this the same way that I did. Okay, so I'm going to add this. In summary, it is noticeable that there are a greater proportion of male than female faculty at this university, considering these 7 different majors. Okay, so that's the interesting piece of information that I've learned. Okay, is that if we look at the fields where you have more women, then we've got arts. Okay, there's more women there, and we've got history. There's more women there, and then we've got medicine, and there's slightly more women there, but it's almost negligible, right? And then when you look at astronomy, there's quite a bit more, or quite a greater proportion of men, or a higher percentage, because we don't know the actual numbers, right? If we look at numbers, we might be surprised, and we might learn that there are actually more women, because maybe arts and history are huge departments, right? So we don't know that. But certainly, percentage-wise, we can see that in this university, there tends to be a greater proportion of male than female faculty, right? It's 4 versus 3, and you can also see that from the differences. Does everybody see that? So does everybody see what I'm looking at? And I did arrive to that by going through these steps, right? So by explaining the differences in the proportion of male to female staff. So everybody sees that summary, and that summary is nowhere else in my document. So I did not write that in the overview. I did not write that in the introduction, because I didn't know that until I did all of my analysis. So until I specifically went through all the steps. And students, yes, you can do this in 20 minutes. So if you practice, to be honest with you, if I were doing this by myself, I would have done this in 10 minutes. But you can certainly do it in 20 when you practice the correct way, okay? So hopefully everybody sees that. Now we can, and we should, review the entire essay to make sure that it makes sense, okay? So the bar graph illustrates the percentage of female and male faculty according to 7 subjects: arts, astronomy, history, engineering, law, medicine, and science in 2008 in a university. Looking at the data, it is clear that in some majors there is a relatively balanced distribution of men and women, namely arts and medicine, while in others there are significantly more males than females: astronomy, science, law, and engineering. However, history is dominated by female faculty. In greater detail, medicine has nearly a 50-50 proportion of men to women staff, while arts have slightly more women than men at 55 to 45% respectively. However, Astronomy, science, and law are more disproportionate, with a greater number of men than women, 65 to 35% for the first two, and 60 to 40% for the latter. The most skewed gender ratio in any field is engineering, which is dominated by men at 90%, and the second most is history, dominated by women at 75%. In summary, it is noticeable that there is a greater proportion of male than female faculty at this university, considering these 7 different majors. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see. Baljit writes, summary, the gender ratio is well balanced in all faculties of different fields except engineering. I don't know, Baljit. Is it well balanced? I mean, 65 to 35%? So. I kind of agree with you, Baljit, but not completely. Zarina writes, in summary, it is apparent that male faculty is more dominant than female academic personnel in most subjects. Zarina, that works. That's good. Okay. Arda writes, in summary, the majors that have more female staff than male are arts, history, and medicine, while male personnel are more than females in other subjects. Oversimplification, Arda. I think you could write it that way, but I mean, medicine, it's so close, like it's trivial. So I don't know if I would mention that as more women. It's if like one teacher, 2 teachers quit, then it's going to be the same. So I don't know. I mean, I careful with that, Arda. It's a little bit of an oversimplification. Okay, at least describe medicine uniquely. All right. Okay, students, that is the essay. So that completes this task 1 response. The word count minus my instructions is about 180 words. Okay, so that's a 180 word essay, rough and about. 180 words is pretty good. Okay, so 30 words over the minimum. It's not a lot more. It's like, 20% more. So 20% more than the minimum requirement for the word count. It's pretty good. And now I'm done. Okay, again, students, I was using some Grammarly assistance there for some of the small corrections to plural be verbs and such. So use Grammarly. Use our Grammarly link. There you go, to help you write your essays. It's free. Can't go wrong with that. You win, we win. Use our link. And then if you use our link for Grammarly and we see that you've signed up using our link, then we can also give you a score estimate for your essay. You can email essays to us for a score estimate to find out what band you are. Just send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. Okay, and we'll send you back a band score estimate. For getting textbooks and writing help and speaking help for your IELTS exam, definitely visit us at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. We have lots of help for you on both of those websites, students, and those websites are basically the textbooks for these live classes. So definitely join the premium course and use it. Okay, this is our general IELTS website here. All you have to do is click this big red button that's just right behind my head there. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access, so well worth it. For the academic IELTS, same idea. It's this website here, and you can click any of these big red buttons to join the premium IELTS package. It's right there. Next class, we will use these websites for listening audio from our listening exams. So come back in about 50 minutes for listening. Section 1, Section 2. Thank you, Carolina, for putting the Discord link into the chat. I appreciated that. And thank you, members, for your effort today. Hopefully you picked up some valuable information and vocabulary in the lesson today. There was certainly a fair bit there. Remember again, students, that for those high band scores in the academic IELTS, you need to have a clear understanding of bar charts versus pie charts versus line charts. They're different essays. They require different analyses, different vocabulary. So practice them. Learn the right strategies. You cannot write a template response for these essays because you will not get a good score. You have to have original good writing. Okay, that's my final tip for this class. Hopefully I will see you in about 50 minutes for listening part 1 and listening part 2 in our next class. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out from Victoria for now, but I'll be back shortly. Until then, much love. See you soon.